Hey guys, welcome. My name is Kendall. Today we're going to be talking about taxes. Now, taxes. Why would we spend time talking about taxes? Because most people that I come across, they are paying way too much in taxes, and they think there's nothing they can do about it. Have you ever taken time to realize that taxes is the #1 expense in life? More than food, clothing, shelter, entertainment combined, you're going to pay more in taxes than anything else. So if there's a better way to reduce your tax liability, how many of you would be interested in that? Now, you should be raising your hand because all of us should be trying to figure out how to pay less money in income tax. Well, let's go ahead and let's pull up the screen share here. Go ahead and mirror this over to the computer so you guys can see this. Okay, I believe that's working. Okay, you guys see that? All right, cool. Now we're just gonna put a little smiley face, make sure that's coming through. All right, awesome. Okay, guys, so taxes. As we talked earlier in one of our other videos, we talked about the many different ways of making money. You can earn your income as an employee, where you trade your time for dollars, right? And we're familiar with this. And here's the problem with employees is that typically this is the way you make your money. Watch. See if this looks familiar. You go earn your money. The first thing that comes out is they pull out taxes. And then you get to spend what's left over. I didn't ever like this model. I said, there's got to be a better way. So then I became self-employed, and that was the next stretch. And I'll show you where I made mistakes in being self-employed. Then I transitioned to becoming a business owner and an investor. Now, this is where you want to play, because as a business owner, you're privy to all sorts of tax deductions, right? You've heard the phrase above the line versus below the line. Let me show you what that means. You see, we earn our money, then we get to go out and spend it in the form of expenses, and then we pay tax on what's left over. That's a great way to write tax. That looks so stupid. Oh well, we'll fix it. See, that was double taxed. There were 2 X's. So you're taxed on what's left over, but I get to determine how many expenses are above the line versus below the line and adjust my income tax accordingly. So before I came over and incorporated, I lived on this side. I was stuck on the left-hand side of the cash flow quadrant. And the challenge with this is, as an employee, they took taxes first. As a self-employed business owner running it as a sole proprietor, I ran into challenges as well because I was making good money and I'd flow that through, and I had a sole prop, which means I'm running everything on my Social Security number. And I would expense out about $25,000 in expenses, but still had $100,000 flowing through as income. Well, what's the challenge in that? Well, I thought it was no challenge. I'm like, that's great. I just made 100 grand, until it comes tax time and realizing that there's a 15.3% self-employment tax. So right out of the gate, I was paying $15,300 in self-employment tax. That takes my taxable income down to 85 grand. Then I have my ordinary income tax on top of that. And I'm like, holy cow, why did I work so hard? Everything's going away in taxes. Well, then I was introduced to my buddy, Mark Kohler. And Mark Kohler taught me how to go in there and incorporate, set up my S corporation. So he came and set me up as an S corp. And the good thing about this is I made the same 125 grand and put that through, had the same 25K in expenses, but then he showed me how I could split my revenue, start shifting the way that I get taxed on those dollars. And he says, Kendall, do a salary dividend split. And at first I didn't understand this. I thought, well, what is that? How does that work? I would literally write the check, right? You can imagine the check here, and I'm writing and filling everything in. Over here in the memo, I would write salary. And over here I'd write dividend. Well, folks, that doesn't work. That's not what he's talking about. He says, you got to set up payroll. So I did a 1/3, and I pulled 1/3, 2/3 split, and I pulled about $33,000 as a W-2. Well, when I step this up through my payroll, they actually withhold the payroll taxes, which in this case would be about $5,000. Okay. Now the other $67,000, that would still come into my company, but that would be distributed to me in the form of a K-1. So I'm still netting the same $100,000. But check this out. Over here, from before I incorporated as an S corp, look, how much was I paying in self-employment tax? 15 grand. 15,300 bucks is what the SE tax is on this. Versus over here, 5,000 bucks. Now, let's see if you guys can put together what that means. That's a savings. I saved over $10,000. $10,000 in tax by just implementing one strategy. One strategy. Now, was that worth it? Would you do that? My goodness, yes, it was worth it. What did Abraham Lincoln tell us about this? He says, a penny saved is a penny earned. Well, what is over $10,000 saved? That's $10,000 that I still get to spend in my family, for our household, that I don't have to pay taxes on, okay? Or that I don't have to give into taxes. Well, guys, this is just one of the dozens and dozens of tax strategies that Mark has introduced me to. Another one that's pretty fascinating that you guys might be able to put into your life is he showed me the example. And by the way, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. I'm just showing you what I do in my world. If you're going to implement this, get educated. Learn how to do this, right? Talk to professionals so that you know how to do this right. The next phase was, I've got 4 kids. So he says, look, Kendall, do your kids participate in extracurricular activities? I said, yeah, they do. You know, they participate in violin and dance and gymnastics and piano, and they've got all these different things going on. And he said, well, how are you paying for that now? And like everybody else, it was like this. You know, I make my money, and then I spend for the production of income. I have my expenses, and then I'm taxed on what's left over. And I was paying for all of my kids' expenses on post-tax dollars, below the line expenses, right? And he said, no. There's a better way. He says, why don't you put your kids on payroll? I said, what do you mean put my kids on payroll? And he showed me how I could put my 15-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 10-year-old, and my 6-year-old daughter, put all of them on payroll. So Caitlin's my little paper shred administrator. She comes in and she helps me shred the papers in the office. And there's still, to this day, there was one day, this is a great story. I had a box, right? A box, and everything that goes in the shred box, that's what she shreds. Well, one day she ran out of papers in the paper shred box. So she started grabbing papers off my desk. To this day, I have no idea what she shredded. I have no idea how long she was shredding. So, you know, she got employee of the month that week or that month. Hopefully she shredded some bills that I didn't want to pay. But Caitlin, I can actually pay her to be my paper shredder administrator. She can get paid on payroll, and then she can take the money and pay for her own violin lessons. Now you're like, why would you make your kid pay for violin lessons? Look, let's not miss the mark. What I did is, as I pay my kids over here, we put this into our family management company from my S Corp. As we do this over here, I create an expense. I create a tax deduction. Now, moving forward, they just changed all the tax legislation. It used to be that we could only pay our kids up to $6,000. Now each one of these is up to $12,000. $12,000 I can pay my kids. That's a $48,000 tax deduction in my case. Now that was if I was paying them all 12 grand. Now Caitlin, she works hard, but I don't think I could justify paying her 12 grand a year. But you're starting to see with just a couple of tax strategies why, ever since I learned this and implemented it, I've been able to save 2/3 taxes almost indefinitely. I earn a very good 6-figure income and I pay very little in income tax. Why? Well, let me show you. Remember this model up here? We looked at the cash flow quadrant. The reason I pay little in taxes is because I've moved from the left side of the quadrant to the right side. What does that mean? I'm no longer an employee or just self-employed. I've been able to shift this. And as I've shifted over here to a business owner and investor, let's look at what do I provide? Why do I get so many tax deductions? Well, number one, I provide housing. Number two, I provide jobs. And when we can do well what the government is horrible at doing, we get all these tax deductions to the tune of over 400 different tax deductions are available to me to put here above the line. Is this starting to make sense? You guys picking up on this? What if you could make this show up in your world? Now, if you're paying too much over here, if you're stuck on the left-hand side and you want to pay less in taxes, you've got to start a small business. The number one tax strategy in the country is start a small business. Secondary to that, the best way to implement it is become an investor. Become a real estate investor, a business owner. You're privy to hundreds and hundreds of tax deductions. Now, I know here we're just starting. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We get into so much more information on how this can be done. But for many of you, this is revelatory. You didn't even know you could do this. And you're coming down and you're running your own business. I have a friend of mine, he's a chiropractor. He was running hundreds of thousands of dollars through his business, paying taxes out the nose, and didn't even know that these things were an option. Put him in touch with the right tax professional. His life's never been the same. So ladies and gentlemen, taxes is one of those things. It's you love it or you hate it. I actually dig taxes because I've connected with professionals who make it easy to understand, who actually, they're not just there to do my tax return. but to help me figure out how to minimize my tax liability. If that's important to you, you've come to the right place. We've got more videos coming down in the future so we can help you take this information and others and be able to go out there and create more wealth. Have a great day.